what are you left with? Well, the left says you have nothing to cut except defense or trim around the margins. But now he's saying, yes, there's a lot to cut because what you think are essential were pretty much products of the Great Society that we got along fine without. Why do we need a Department of Energy? Why do we have to have National Public Radio or PBS? Maybe we can outsource it. They're talking of all these other areas that are sizable as a way of avoiding to cut Social Security or Medicare. We're spending $1.1 billion servicing the debt. We spend $800 billion, on defense.
Hello, welcome to the channel. I invite you to hit that like button and to subscribe to the channel. That's really the only thing I ask of you, because that would really help the channel to grow and allow me to post more such content that you simply no longer get within the mainstream media. Today's topic is the U.S. debt, especially the U.S. debt clock found at usdebtclock.org. A fascinating and complex tool that provides a real-time snapshot of the United States financial health. It offers a wealth of information, not only about the national debt, but also about the broader economic landscape. More importantly, we will look at more than just the numbers in this video. We will take a deep dive into their repercussions, geopolitically speaking. Understanding the U.S. debt clock. It is a window into America's economic realities. The U.S. debt clock is a dynamic digital resource providing a real-time snapshot of the American economy. Beyond its overwhelming display of rapidly changing figures, it offers a wealth of data that can reveal key insights into the national debt, economic performance, monetary policy, demographic trends, and most importantly, fiscal sustainability. Analyzing the chart systematically allows you to have a deeper understanding of U.S. fiscal policy and the interconnected nature of government spending, taxation, and economic growth. The national debt has consequences. At the center of the U.S. debt clock is our total national debt, which includes both publicly held debt and intragovernment holdings. This figure reflects the cumulative borrowing of the federal government over time. The rapid increase in this number suggests an ongoing reliance on deficit spending, a practice with significant long-term consequences, such as increasing interest payments on the debt, potentially inflationary pressures, and obviously concerns over their sustainability. The debt to GDP ratio is another critical metric, comparing total national debt to the country's economic output. A ratio exceeding 100% indicates that the nation owes more than its entire yearly economic production. This raises concerns about its ability to service that debt without drastic fiscal adjustments. This ratio is critical also for investors, policymakers, and international stakeholders who assess U.S. creditworthiness. Government spending and revenue. That's what's tracked on the U.S. debt clock. It also tracks federal expenditures across categories such as defense, healthcare, Social Security, and education. Analyzing this data helps in understanding where taxpayer dollars are allocated and how spending priorities evolve. For example, rising Medicare and Social Security expenditures highlight the financial strain of an aging population, signaling potential future tax increases or, worse, benefit adjustments. On the revenue side, figures for income tax, corporate tax, payroll tax, and those revenues provide an insight into the government's ability to fund its obligations. Discrepancies between revenue and spending illustrate deficit levels and help explain why borrowing continues to increase. When expenditures consistently exceed tax revenues, deficit financing through borrowing becomes necessary, and that is nothing but adding more to the national debt. The biggest problem is unfunded liabilities. They are a looming crisis. One of the most alarming sections of the debt clock is the unfunded liabilities, which include obligations like Social Security and Medicare. These figures represent promises made to future generations without sufficient funds set aside to actually fulfill them. The rising unfunded liabilities suggest a growing fiscal burden, necessitating policy reforms to sustain these critical programs without increasing debt dependency. A critical but often overlooked section of the debt clock is the money supply. And those figures include the M1 and M2, which are measures of liquid money, and the broader money supply. Both these numbers help gauge inflationary trends and the effectiveness of monetary policy. Rapid expansion in the money supply often correlates with inflationary pressures, which end up devaluing the currency and reducing consumer purchasing power. The U.S. debt clock also tracks the U.S. dollar's value relative to gold and other commodities, offering insights into the long-term trends in monetary stability. Comparing historical values can help determine whether the economy is experiencing inflationary, devaluation, or relative stability. There's also employment and economic productivity. The site provides real-time employment data, including total workforce numbers, labor force participation rates, and unemployment figures. These statistics offer insight into the economic health and productivity of the USA. A declining labor force participation rate, for example, can indicate demographic shifts or structural unemployment, which has implications for tax revenues and social safety net sustainability. Additionally, tracking GDP growth against the rising debt levels helps to assess whether our borrowing is driving productive economic expansion or merely sustaining consumption and government obligations. If debt levels outpace GDP growth, it suggests potential economic instability over the long term. State and local debt. That's the subnational burden. The debt clock also features a state-level data indicator showing debt levels, GDP, and population statistics for individual states. This allows for comparisons of economic performance and fiscal responsibility at the state level. Similarly, comparisons with global debt figures can contextualize U.S. borrowing relative to other major economies, offering insights into America's economic standing on the world stage. One important figure is that the U.S. debt has an impact on military and geopolitical strategy. This is a key but often underappreciated consequence of U.S. debt accumulation. That means its impact on military readiness and geopolitical strategy. As our debt servicing costs increase, defense spending faces tighter constraints. While the U.S. remains the world's largest military power, budgetary limitations are forcing difficult choices regarding force structure, modernization, and global force projection. For example, it means reduced military investment. Rising debt-related interest payments increasingly compete with the defense budget. For instance, in fiscal year 2024, the United States spent about $882 billion on interest payments, surpassing the $874 billion allocated for national defense. This has constrained investment in cutting-edge technologies such as hypersonic missiles, artificial intelligence-driven defense systems, both of which are critical for maintaining global military dominance. The compromise on defense spending has sparked concerns among policymakers, such as Senator Lindsey Graham, who has argued that the current budget increase fails to meet inflation-adjusted needs. There's also a strain on force readiness. Fiscal pressures lead to delays in maintenance, in training, in recruitment. All of that impacts military preparedness. For example, the U.S. military has faced challenges in sustaining a fully ready force while maintaining its commitments in Europe, the Indo-Pacific, and the Middle East. The strain is especially evident in the Indo-Pacific, where the U.S. has struggled to match China's growing naval presence due to budgetary constraints. There are also limitations on strategic flexibility. High debt levels reduce the government's ability to rapidly respond to global crises with financial or military support. The ongoing aid to Ukraine, which has amounted to billions of dollars, exemplifies this challenge. Similarly, ensuring Taiwan's defense posture against potential aggression from China also requires substantial funding, which may become politically and economically untenable as our national debt continues to rise. Plus, there's the problem of geopolitical leverage weakening, which means that high debt levels increase U.S. dependency on foreign creditors, particularly nations such as China and Japan, which now hold significant portions of the U.S. Treasury's debt. This dependency complicates diplomatic relations, as seen during the trade negotiations with China, where economic leverage was limited due to this intertwined financial relationship. There's also a shift in global power dynamics as a result. As our debt grows and military spending remains more or less constrained, although it needs to be intensified, adversaries such as China and Russia are capitalizing on this fiscal vulnerability to expand their own military reach and influence in key regions. For instance, China has significantly increased its defense budget, focusing on modernizing its military capabilities and expanding its influence in the South China Sea. Russia, despite economic sanctions, has continued to invest in advanced weaponry and cyber capabilities, challenging the U.S. dominance in global affairs.
Have you directed Elon Musk to review Pentagon spending, given it's the biggest discretionary spending in the federal budget?
Yes, I have. Pentagon, education, just about everything. We're going to go through everything, just as it was so bad with what we just went through with this horrible situation we just went through. And I guess 97% of the people have been dismissed. It was very, very unfortunate. You're not going to find anything like that, but you're going to find a lot. And I've instructed him to go check out education, to check out the Pentagon, which is the military. And, sadly, you'll find some things that are pretty bad.
The news isn't all bad. For one thing, we finally have an agency that is trying to combat the rise in our deficits and debts. That agency or entity, depending on how you want to look at it, is called DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. And DOGE is now shaping U.S. military spending and geopolitical strategy. The establishment of the Department of Government Efficiency, spearheaded by Elon Musk under the Trump administration, has introduced sweeping reforms aimed at reducing federal expenditures and eliminating wasteful spending. While these efforts are intended to streamline government operations, they have also had significant implications for U.S. military spending and, by extension, its geopolitical maneuverings. The impact on military spending. DOGE, for example, has targeted the Department of Defense, which accounts for nearly half of all federal discretionary spending, as a key area for cost-cutting measures. Initial findings have identified approximately $80 million in wasteful expenditures, including programs deemed non-essential to the military's core mission. For example, DOGE has proposed reducing investments in legacy systems like the F-35 stealth fighter jets, which Musk has criticized as outdated and overly expensive. Instead, DOGE advocates reallocating resources towards emerging technologies such as unmanned drones and artificial intelligence, which could enhance efficiency, but may also be something that disrupts traditional defense contracting dynamics. are also challenges to military readiness. While Doge's initiatives aim to optimize spending, the aggressive cost-cutting measures risk undermining military readiness. Programs essential for maintenance, training, and recruitment could face delays or reductions, and these could potentially impact the U.S. military's ability to sustain a fully prepared force across multiple theaters of operation. This is particularly concerning given the growing demands in regions like the Indo-Pacific, where China's military expansion poses a significant challenge. The restructuring of military spending under Doge could also have geopolitical implications and far-reaching effects on U.S. future geopolitical strategy. For instance, reduced funding for traditional defense programs may limit the U.S.'s ability to project power globally and to respond rapidly to any crises. This could embolden adversaries like China and Russia to expand their influence in key regions. Additionally, Doge's focus on efficiency may strain diplomatic relations with allies who rely upon the U.S. military and its support, as seen in the ongoing aid problem to Ukraine and in commitments made to Taiwan's defense. On the other hand, Doge's emphasis on modernizing defense capabilities presents an opportunity to enhance the United States' strategic edge. In short, there are opportunities for innovation. By prioritizing investments in cutting-edge technologies, the U.S. could maintain its military dominance while addressing fiscal constraints. Companies specializing in defense technology, such as Palantir and Dural Industries, stand to benefit from this shift, potentially driving innovation in areas such as cybersecurity and autonomous systems. The U.S. debt clock is actually a call to awareness and action. It's not merely a chart of numbers. It's a powerful visual representation of America's economic dynamics, challenges, and choices. By understanding the relationships between its various components, which are debt, revenue, spending, liabilities, and the broader economic indicators, one gains a clearer picture of the nation's fiscal health and the urgent need for sustainable policies. The additional strain on military readiness and geopolitical strategy further underscore the need for responsible debt management, and this highlights the importance of the work being done by Elon Musk and Doge. All of this should serve as a wake-up call for policymakers and citizens alike, urging a proactive approach to secure financial stability and national security for future generations.